My name's Phil Huzzard, and I'm a principal of Melbourne marketing firm APR21 that works with a number of national brands, some of which have been major pharmaceutical brands and those sold through the pharmacy channel. And I'm joined in hosting this webinar by Benepharm's Chris Lemon, himself a successful pharmacist coming from a pharmacy family, in fact. I'm also joined by Eric Moschietto, who has a history in retail brands in the hair and beauty space, as well as an equally long history in senior roles at major national pharmacy brands. So let me begin by thanking all of you for being on this webinar. We are in fact oversubscribed, so it's good to see such a strong turnout. And thanks also for the many of you who have registered your interest in Benepharm. And we hope that you find tonight's webinar to be of vital interest. A couple of housekeeping issues. We already have a couple of questions which were emailed to us and that we'll get to at the conclusion of the webinar. If you have any more questions, please activate the Q&A button along the bottom of your screen and type in your question. If time allows, we'll get to all of the questions. If we run out of time, we'll answer them and include the answers in a follow-up email. Also, we're recording this webinar, and that will be made available more broadly on the Benepharm website in the coming day or two. So, the contents of today. Let's talk about what we're going to cover. The first thing we're going to cover is, getting past the introduction, is Chris is going to talk a little bit about the Benepharm concept. In particular, he's going to talk to you about what drove his interest in the Benepharm concept and how, coming together as a team, we've responded to some of the concerns that Chris had about the pharmacy industry in its current form. Then I'm going to get Eric Moschietto to talk about the operating principles behind Benepharm. He'll also talk in a little bit of detail about some of the connections that we intend to make and partnerships that we intend to build in order to get Benepharm as competitive as it can be. I'll then talk about the Benepharm brand, how we intend to release the Benepharm brand, make it available to people and make it as accessible as possible. And then we'll discuss where we are in the development process and the progress to date, and we'll finish off with some next steps and some questions. So that's what we're covering this evening. So without any further ado, what I'm going to do is hand over to Chris to talk about the Benepharm concept. Chris, over to you.
You may or may not be aware, I'm currently the lead applicant in the impending franchisee class action against Priceline. My lawyer, Stuart Levitt, thinks it will be helpful to offer an alternative brand to disgruntled Priceline franchisees, where we can offer them a viable exit strategy from the Priceline brand. Our case is based on Priceline's, we say, illegal control of pharmacies, and that breaches the state legislation, New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland. So what I've found in my experience in dealing with Priceline is that once you lose control of big aspects of your business, you lose control of the profits. So Benepharm is all about getting that control back into our hands, back into making a profit. And Priceline's biggest failing is, with all their franchise groups, is that they just can't resist clipping the ticket again and again. I was able to purchase stock for my independent pharmacy at a better price with better credit terms. And that's just ridiculous. Their operational structure is permanently conflicted between the interests of the franchise owners, API and its shareholders, and the interests of the franchisees. And you can't ever fix that. It's a bad model. This is an opportunity to rectify those franchise failings with this cooperative style model that Benepharm offers. merging the two conflicted parties is the only effective way to resolve that conflict of interests. It builds value in the brand for the member shareholders rather than distribute the value to third parties. And then the next slide. As shareholder members, you will be the beneficiaries of the equity you build together with me in the Benepharm brand. All members will be eligible to nominate for election to the Benepharm board, which will work with the Benepharm executive in developing marketing strategies, supplier relationships, and brand equity building. With the aim to be membership fee neutral, the goal is to have a vast majority of your monthly contributions to Benepharm spent on advertising and marketing, heavily subsidised by the pharma and FMCG companies, building Benepharm into a household known brand. As shareholder members, there'll be a lot more transparency at the head office level than any of the current supplier-owned franchise models. But this is not going to be an easy, quick and easy fix. We are putting together a team of industry-leading experts to deliver and develop the Benepharm concept efficiently and effectively. The best time to get on board with the Benepharm brand is at the ground floor as a foundation shareholder member. So I look forward to as many of you joining me as possible on this fantastic new journey into revolutionising the pharmacy industry.
Thanks so much, Chris. My apologies for not keeping up with you on the slide, rolling out the bullet points there, but I'm sure everybody was able to certainly understand what you were talking about without the benefit of that. Now what I'd like to do is introduce a little bit about the Benepharm structure briefly. First of all, what's important to remember is that Benepharm will have an elected board, and the board will be made up of people who are either operating pharmacists or others that the owner members deem as appropriate to have on the board. But the board will only ever be elected by its members. There will be a concise Benepharm executive, and the aim of that is to have just enough structure and personnel to ensure professional management and professional carrying out of the membership organisation without incurring too much overhead. All of that will come together in the interests of the Benepharm National Member Shareholder Group. And so, as you can see, there's no conflict of interest at all between members and shareholders, because the members are indeed shareholders and they're the only shareholders of Benepharm. So, moving to the next phase, what I'd like to do is introduce Eric Moschietto. As I mentioned earlier, Eric has a long history in pharmacy and in beauty and hair brands. And Eric's going to talk a little bit about the operating model. And so, Eric, without further ado, over to you.
Thanks, Phil. Hi, everyone. I am Eric Moschietto, and some of you may already know me, as in the last 20 years, I have passionately advocated for the pharmacy trade whilst working as a supplier. I have managed global brands, national brands, and most recently, private and exclusive brands for one of the pharmaceutical wholesalers. And it is through that experience that I was able to get an insight as to how a franchisor is running their day-to-day pharmacy operations. I have also owned a modest fine food retail outlet in Melbourne, and that really gave me as close as an experience as possible about the day-to-day running and the struggles you're facing as a pharmacist owner in running a retail pharmacy outlet. And I fully emphasize and empathize with your struggles. So it is the combination of Chris's frustration, which led him to a class action, and my broad experience in the market that kickstarted the conversation between us about how we can change the game in the pharmacy industry in Australia by delivering a model that is not necessarily new to Australian pharmacies, but is needed in the current trading environment. And from a qualitative research we have undertaken and a large number of people we have already spoken to, we have received an overwhelming feedback of positivity about the Benepharm brand and our project, which clearly indicates that not only the Benepharm concept and brand is needed, but is wanted. So that's, we are looking forward to the future. And today, I personally am looking forward to talking to you about the Benepharm operating principles. And these principles are the foundation of our brand. They are about consistency, leadership, partnerships, and support. I often say that actually Australian pharmacies were there before us, and they will be still here long after we're gone. So the idea of developing a pharmacy retail brand, which is wholly owned by pharmacists and only by pharmacists, is to leverage your collective power in the long term to build equity in a brand that has value at all steps of the supply chain. Firstly, to the patients, through a consistent shopping experience and customer service experience as well. Secondly, to the wholesalers through size and relevance. Thirdly, to the suppliers by honoring our promises. And finally, to the Benepharm members and the owners of a Benepharm brand by enabling them to own a piece of a pie and harvest the fruit of their labor. As a pharmacist owner, I find it surprising that whilst you've always had the upper hand at the negotiation table, there's been an erosion of your position in the discussion from a national point of view. And that's, to me, is the result of two main reasons. One is individualistic behavior, and the second one is the renunciation of one of your most precious assets, being running a retail business. And as Chris has mentioned before, you have let that strategic control, you've delegated that strategic control over to someone else. Or in simple terms, if one of you want to give me your checkbook, I can spend as much money as I can very quickly. So we'll be addressing the latter, which is the renunciation of the precious asset of running a retail brand, by creating a brand that is wholly owned by pharmacists. And I'll touch base a little bit about this in a minute. But we're addressing the former, which is individualistic behavior, by introducing our first operating principle as a Benepharm brand, which is about being 100% adherent to a program of core-ranging, promotional activities, and pricing. And the rationale behind this is in two folds. The first fold is that we want to deliver to the patients a consistent shopping experience and customer service experience from one Benepharm store to the next. This is how you will build value in the long term. And that is what you would expect yourself from as a shopper when you go shopping at retail level. And I know the fondness of pharmacists towards golf. And for example, if you're into golf, you would expect to go from one Drummond golf store and find the range, price, and promotions to be consistent with the next Drummond golf store that you visit in the market. And there is no reason why with a Benepharm brand it should be any different. We want consistent customer service and shopping experience, and that starts with ranging, promotional activities, and pricing. In the long term, what that consistency does, it creates value for you as a brand owner. And by joining Benepharm, you're stepping up into brand ownership. It's a different ball game. And so we want to be able to leverage that value in several parts. And therefore, it is very important that we are consistent as a group. The most successful retail stories in recent years have all been coming from groups that are very consistent and behave as a unit. when listening to Chris earlier, most of you will think that it is absolutely nonsensical that a pharmacist owner or operating 2 or 3 stores gets a better net into store price than a group negotiating with suppliers of 20, 50 or 200 or 400 stores. But it is a reality, and you're right in questioning this. However, more than net into store price, as you become a brand owner, you create value long-term through a proposition as a retail brand that is consistent and and does not have a disjointed customer value proposition between one store to the other. And I insist on this because it is a foundation pillar. For example, just take a look at a business like IGA or Foodworks and its valuation, and compare it with its peers in Richie's supermarkets, Drake's supermarket in South Australia, or Romeo's, let alone comparing it to the valuation of Coles and Woolworths. This is what happens when individualistic behavior takes over. It diminishes the value of a brand and the equity you're building into it. So for the benefit of all Benepharm members, we will be operating a Benepharm brand with a modus operandi of full adherence to a program. With that being the case, we will be able to start building on strong foundations and recruiting new members. And the second pillar or an operating principle of our Benepharm brand is the leadership recruitment and mentoring program. This program is a truly, truly exciting part of our brand and is a collective responsibility between all of us members and team members of the Benepharm brand. The Benepharm's leadership recruitment and leadership and mentoring program will act in 2 folds. One, it will obviously grow the brand quantitatively by recruiting new members, but also qualitatively. And the qualitative part is very, very important in my mind. It will enable existing Benepharm members to mentor new members and ensure that they are becoming very successful in running their day-to-day operations and have enjoy being part of the Benepharm brand. What that does in turn is that ensures that the new members are consistent with the Benepharm brand, and by maintaining consistency in the brand and adhering to the program, we create a flow-on effect of consistent shopping experience. We generate more value in the brand and equity in the market in the eyes of the shoppers, and also we build more value in the brand as a group of pharmacist brand owners. So they're very, very important part. The mentoring program is critical in the foundation of our brand. Alongside that, we'll be able to gain, with more members and more quality engagement, we'll be able to gain more insights from our membership base, and that will help us optimize our business, whether it be in getting better service from suppliers, wholesalers, or better pricing. But I'd suggest that if we should create a group, this is part of being business as usual. So all in all, you would expect that. So with foundations in place for having a consistent shopping experience and a consistent brand, a leadership program at its core, we'll be able to nurture and foster long-term relationships with a number of suppliers that have a history of supporting the pharmacy industry and a future, an invested future in supporting our pharmacy industry. And so a third operating model is centered around supplier partnerships. We often underestimate what suppliers can do for us. We will be working with our suppliers to understand that, to work with them and grow with them, so that they understand that not every group, and we certainly won't start at that, is 500 stores, but a supplier will, if by collaborating with them, they will understand that's the case and they will adjust the forecast accordingly. But if a supplier invests in co-op or rebates into any group, they expect to deal with retailers that do what they said they would. And one cannot do that if consistency and the adherence to a program, the first operating principle of Benepharm brand, is not set in stone at the start, which is why I insisted on it. As part of our supplier engagement strategy, we will be offering those suppliers the opportunity to partner with us to champion specific categories that they are specialized in with measurable KPIs. We'll hold them to account and work with them to improve our position. And we'll be also be able to learn from their local, global market insights and category dynamics as well. This forms part of a broader strategy which will be signed up by the board and is designed to deliver a greater return for all parties. And then by having our brands, our Benepharm brands to provide a return on investment to all parties, suppliers by honoring our promises, members by leveraging their insight and striving towards a best net into store price as possible, and our patients through a mix of assortments and offers that are compelling, we will be able to create a value proposition throughout the supply chain that is returning that provides a return on investment that is superior to the rest of the trade. I also would like to share with you that within the next stage of our development, we will be looking at how we can deliver an assortment that is differentiated against our competitor by bringing to life a number of private and exclusive brands. This will allow us to play in areas that are not based on discounting. And the idea of having private and exclusive brands are also to improve the profitability of every sale. And we can reinvest behind those brands because they would be our own. So that is very, very important how we also partner with our suppliers to make that happen. So completing our first three principles of having consistency, leadership and mentoring, and supplier partnership, which is underpinned by a strategy designed to provide a return on investment through the value chain. The final principle is, and nonetheless, is about support. And the best way we can support our members to do very well with a Benepharm brand is to embed an operating principle, which is to continuously revert a share of our revenue into media, marketing, and advertising. Phil will talk to you about it in a second. However, I'd like to stress that investing into media, marketing, and advertising is fundamental for the Benepharm brand's long-term success. And therefore, the prosperity of you pharmacist owners and Benepharm members. This is why it is embedded in our core principles from the start. Media, marketing, and advertising has long been let go by most major pharmacy brands. I can even compare it myself when I first arrived in Australia, how much media and marketing there was around pharmacy brands and how little there is now. But it is on that basis that we'll set the Benepharm brand. Our model enables that, and we have made it a cooperating principle. It is set upon 3 points: building brand awareness. That brand awareness is to generate foot traffic into your stores, and we'll be able to measure the result of our media and marketing investments through the evaluation of our retail sales transactions. More retail sales, the more interest we'll generate from our suppliers, the more rebates we will get from our suppliers, and the share of that revenue will be reinvested into more media and marketing, and therefore we will create a virtuous circle of growth in building brand equity in the market. So thank you. On a final note, I would like to underline one thing, that is that we are currently looking into technology available in the market, which would allow us to operate Benepharm without the need for the new Benepharm members to change their IT system. So just to be clear, by joining Benepharm, we are looking at no change of IT system from a new Benepharm member. That's it for me. And I would like now to hand you over to the magical Phil Huzzard to cover the marketing and media side of a Benepharm brand with more details. Just one thing, you may not know who Phil Huzzard is, but he is one of the wizards of the Australian media and communication landscape. And we are very lucky to have him as part of a starting team of a Benepharm brand. So over to you, Phil.
Well, that's incredibly generous of you, Eric, and I really very much appreciate it. And look, my job here today is to tell you a little bit about the Benepharm brand and how we intend to roll it out. And I guess the starting point is that we all know what a disruptive force the major discounters have been in the pharmacy sector in recent years. And it really has led to a race to the bottom, and in some ways has contributed to a devaluation of the sector. Benepharm was always intended to be a community pharmacy brand, but one with teeth. And that's a really important differentiation, one that has the buying power that enables its members to compete more effectively with a couple of the giants in the room, most notably Chemist Warehouse. We'll be positioning members as valued health professionals that care about the communities that they serve. And when we invest in the Benepharm brand, the beneficiaries will be the brand owners, and that is our member shareholders. So that's a really important point, is that brand equity will begin to grow over a period of time and can be accrued by members. I've just realised I'm a little bit out of sync here. We will be branding powerfully. As Chris pointed out, we aim to grow to be more aggressive in market and with more brand strength and more brand weight per store than most of the other pharmacy networks. And we aim to get close to Chemist Warehouse in our brand presence, much closer to Chemist Warehouse than, for example, Sigma or API. We'll be taking a retail approach to our marketing, where every message carries a combination of retail energy. In other words, every message will have an offer and a reason to come into the store. But behind that offer, we'll be expressing our brand messages through every single advertising expression. Our brand values will be on show in every one of those messages as well. We'll also be delivering sophisticated geo-targeted social marketing to your specific prime marketing areas, or PMAs. So we'll be driving traffic directly to your store and away from your competitors. We're planning a loyalty program that will be centrally administered for you, so you don't have to manage it, but that keeps customers coming back to you. And we'll make it as easy as possible for you to bring that brand to life in your store affordably. So rebranding a store is a big investment. It's a big issue. We plan to make it as simple as possible, even down to the colours that we've chosen. Moreover, we will allow our members to do one of two things: either tap into a national network of signage suppliers, a single supplier that operates nationally, to be able to bring the Benepharm style guide to life in your store, or we'll provide that style guide to the shop fit out company of your choice, and you can manage it under your own reconnaissance. Now, the reason for that is that we know that many of the other national pharmacy brands mark up their shop fitting suppliers by very significant sums. And that we see as being a barrier to entry to Benepharm, and it's not something that we want to engage in. Moreover, it would be against our member shareholders' interests to actually charge a markup on that. And so it simply goes against our operating principles. Now what I'd like to do is talk about the Benepharm rollout. As Chris had said, we are in our early days of the development of Benepharm, and the concept creation has taken some time. It's been carefully considered, and a lot of work has been done, not only in how Benepharm would be constituted, but also in some of the operating principles. Some early stage business case activity has been done, but it's not at a point that we'd be happy to share, but that will come later. So right where we are right now is at the stage of proof of concept. So we are here, and that's what this webinar, in fact, is all about. We are looking to gauge the interest of pharmacists around the country in being part of Benepharm, and obviously we want to get as many members as possible to begin our organisation and to start moving it forward. And so our hope is that as a consequence of this webinar, we'll be able to begin to engage more deeply with our potential members. Shortly after we've completed our proof of concept, we'll be in a position to share our business equity, our business model and our equity model. They will be finalised and they'll be shared with those who have participated under an NDA. And I'll come back to that point about the non-disclosure agreement in a little while. And at that point, we'll have also finalised the costs and fees that would be applicable to becoming a Benepharm member. Only then will we open the door for membership. As I said, we're looking for as many people to join as possible, but contributing or committing to membership early in the piece will have some significant benefits, which I'll come to in a short while. Once membership opens, obviously we'll be looking to charge a sign-on fee, and that will obviously assist in bringing us to the point of market readiness. Once we've completed that phase, we'll go forward with the completion of our supplier agreements and our partnerships. We expect that to take a little while, but of course we'll have done a lot of preparatory work while we're working on the other matters of business as well, the business equity model and, the business and equity model. And finally, we'll be getting our systems finalised and ready for operational or to go operational in time for our launch. Only once we've completed those 6 steps will we be actually launching the brand, and we will do so with a reasonable degree of fanfare. Now, I just wanted to touch also on this important matter, and that is the benefits for early adopters. The Benepharm Constitution means that the sooner you join Benepharm, the sooner you begin to accrue value in the brand, value that will build over the years to become quite significant, in fact. You'll also secure the Benepharm brand within your prime marketing area. So obviously we aim to strike a balance between having enough distribution that we are very attractive to supplier partners, but we also want to give our members a prime marketing area that is more than sustainable. It is actually very attractive to them, and we will obviously focus our local area marketing efforts within those prime marketing areas to each member's benefit. And when I say to each member, the important part of Benepharm is that each store outlet carries 1 membership share. So if you are the holder of, or if you own 3 stores, then we'll be protecting 3 prime marketing areas on your behalf and marketing strongly within them. Also, because obviously Benepharm will begin with less members than it will eventually accrue, you'll have a bigger say in the direction of the business as it begins to form. I think that's an important thing, because the forward-thinking members who actually become founder members are the same people that we need on board to be the entrepreneurial drivers of the brand as the shareholders of the brand. And lastly, those founder members will have the pride of knowing that they've changed Australia's pharmacy industry for the better as we build out a brand that behaves so very differently to the national pharmacy brands that you're probably used to. So they are some of the benefits for early adopters. What I'd like to do now is finish up this part of the presentation just by talking about some of the next steps. The first of the next steps is the confirmation of market interest and proof of concept. So once we've completed this part of the work, we will then move on to the confidential sharing of the detailed equity model. What's really important here is that we're able to share information freely with those members that have expressed interest sincerely and with intentionality. What that means is that we need to execute an NDA between us for that confidential sharing of those details. So our request is that if you do have interest in Benepharm, that you complete an NDA as soon as possible. Now, I know that many of the people on this webinar have already done that. If you haven't, what we'll be doing is following up this webinar with an email to you with a very easy way to complete an NDA and get it back to us. And that means we don't have to worry about our confidentiality. Moreover, it requires us to protect your confidentiality in sharing your interest in Benepharm as well. It is a mutual NDA, and the only thing that it ties you to is obviously the protection of IP. So, with that, we are well into our webinar, and we do have around about 20 minutes still to run. So that gives us the opportunity to answer some questions. And I've noticed that there are a few in play. What I'm going to do is I'll read the questions that are on our system. And what I'll also do is ask either Eric, Chris, or indeed I'll answer a question myself, but I'll direct the question to the party that I think is most appropriate to answer it. So the first question is, what will it cost me to become a Benepharm member? Upfront costs, annual costs, and payment terms for purchases. So Chris, perhaps I can direct this to you.
Sure. So the upfront costs and the ongoing costs, monthly or whatever, they're yet to be finalised, but that's in the next step. But in terms of your wholesaling arrangements and so forth, they'll be similar terms to what you already have now, hopefully a little bit better. So with whichever wholesaler we choose to go with, we haven't made that contract yet either.
Awesome. Okay. The next question that I have here is, how will this help me grow my business better and faster than other brands?
I'll answer that one. In my mind, there's several ways you can grow your business. You can grow sales, you can grow profit, and you can grow the valuation of your business. And with Benepharm, the main growth you will get is around the valuation of your business, because you will be an owner of a national pharmacy brand. We also are, as I said before, we'll be working on with our suppliers to get you the best net into store price as possible and get great offers. And also we will work on having a range of private and exclusive brands so that you can maximize your profitability. And the last piece in terms of growing your business is the amount of media and marketing and advertising we'll be putting behind the brand as part of our operating model and principles. That will drive foot traffic for your stores, drive retail sales, and create a virtuous circle. So I hope I've answered those questions. Brand ownership being one of them, and the way we address our business through assortment and investment behind media and marketing is represent the others.
Thank you, and thanks, Eric. I've just realised that I was sharing a screen with some questions on it, so I do apologise, and I hope I've come back to a screen that makes sense. I have another question here. is Benepharm only for former Priceline franchisees? And Chris, perhaps you could answer this.
Yeah, it's not actually. It's an opportunity for anyone who's a part of any franchise to join, or even if you're not, even if you just think that this is going to be a winning brand and you want in early, you don't need to come from a franchise. My lawyer Stuart Levitt, he wanted us to develop something so that we could offer a viable alternative to current franchisees of Priceline, but that's not a requirement of becoming a Benepharm member.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Another question. How is Benepharm really different from other brands? I don't see it. Eric, could you answer this question?
Yeah, the main difference is, as opposed to the other brands, is you will be an owner of this brand. And that is a major difference. It is run it is owned wholly by pharmacists who have the ability to elect the board and therefore influence the strategic direction of your retail business, which you don't have in any other pharmacy brands. The money you pay through franchise arrangements either goes to a corporation, or it goes to a family owning that retail brand, but certainly doesn't go to a business that you own. Should everything go well and according to our financial planning, at the end of a financial year, we should be able to revert dividends back into your business, and that is the major difference. So you would not certainly not have that in any other business model, and that's why Chris at the start of his presentation mentioned that it is a cooperative style arrangement. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Eric. Another question. Do you anticipate having significant compulsory allocations? Eric, this is probably one for you as well.
Yes, very good question. No, the answer is we will have when it is possible, we will have allocation because the rate of sale justifies the allocation of stock. There is new technology available in the market that can help us clearly model that what the demand is going to be on activities, and you don't have to change your point of sale system to do this. I was working on something myself back in my most recent experiences, so the main, if there is an allocation, the main request we will have with our suppliers will be to whatever is left, they have to take the stock back, and therefore we minimize the risk for you if there is any risk. Allocations have a point, which is to have a strong presence in store and show that the retail model is strong, and stock creates demand. Having stock on show creates demands. Also, is a major impairment on your financial balance sheets, and I'm fully aware of that. So it's achieving a balance and working with our supply partners that whatever is excess after the promotion, they'll take back, which is already in place in some cases anyway.
Thank you, Eric. So the next question is, what do I have to do? What will I have to give up by way of brand buying groups or wholesale relationships? So, Chris, would you like to talk about this?
Sure. Well, there are only 3 wholesalers, and so you won't have to give up a relationship with any of those because we're using 1 or 2 of them anyway. In terms of brands in the shop, you may look. We haven't done the cosmetic side of it yet, or so on. But you can't stock every range. You're better off with 2 or 3 ranges of the best sellers. And so if you've got a competing range, say you might have Natio, and Natio is not one of the key suppliers for us, or you may have designer brands, and designer brands is not one of the key suppliers for us. We may have to arrange a supplier buyback, if you like, or some help selling through the product to keep you into the compliant high rebate associated model that we're looking for.
And we've already, the second part of the question is, what do I have to change or do differently in terms of branding systems and processes? So branding, IT systems and processes, I think
sure. Well,
covered that to an extent.
Well, because we're not insisting you change IT platforms. You'll know how to negotiate and use your preferred point of sale system. But the processes you'll have to change. You'll have to get involved into the ticketing and display. So you'll have to train your staff around the catalogue timings and getting the displays in store right, and the ticketing in store right, and the pricing in your point of sale right on time for the catalogue. So there's a few minor processes, repetitive, 3 or 4 weekly, but you'll get used to it, and it's not that hard, and it's not that different to what some of the other franchise groups do anyway. Okay.
And the last question I have in front of me here is, when will you launch? So maybe I can answer that. So our anticipated launch date is September the 1st. That date is our target launch date, and at this point, obviously, it's been a bit of a tricky year because of COVID primarily, and that's caused some issues in terms of the availability, for example, of this term. Eric at the moment is coming to you from France, where he is stuck right now, or he just can't get home. So our time frame has been affected a little negatively by COVID, but not to any great extent. So the September 1st time frame may drift, but it won't be past, at the very latest, we believe, early 2021. Have I got that right?
2022?
Early 2022, my apologies. And obviously, the sooner we complete the proof of concept phase, the sooner that we'll get moving with the other downstream phases, and the sooner we'll be able to launch. So I'm hoping that gives you as tight an answer as we can at this particular point in time. Now, we don't have any other questions from the floor at the moment. May I conclude by just saying thank you to everybody that joined today. Please feel free to email us at info@benepharm.com.au if you have any questions arising from today. Obviously, the recording of this webinar will be available on the Benepharm website in the coming few days. We would ask you to respond positively when you get an email requesting the completion of an NDA. And we really hope that we've shared sufficiently with you today about Benepharm to further excite your interest in it, to the point where you can see how you would benefit from being a Benepharm member and shareholder. And we look forward to sharing more information with you over the coming weeks and months. May I also just apologise, just in terms of my operation of the Zoom hosting there, because I know I was sharing a screen that was a little distracting there for a while. So my apologies for that. I'm a newbie to operating this and it's normally someone else that does it for me. But thank you for your patience with that. So what I'd like to just finish with is just asking Chris and Eric just to give some final comments. So Chris, can I hand over to you?
Sure. I think this is an industry revolutionising opportunity for everybody, and I really hope that as many of you as possible get on board and join me in this adventure. It's time we took control back of our own pharmacies, basically, and control of the profits.
Thank you, Chris. Eric, you're muted. Yeah.
Yep, I'll echo Chris. There's not very often that you'll have a chance to start your own retail pharmacy brand, control it, and have a guarantee that as part of that model, you will retain control of it in the long term. Chris and I, and as well as Phil, we've been working on that very, very hard, although most of us remotely, for quite a few months now. There's been a lot of intelligence put into the development of that model. As I said at the start in my introduction, the qualitative research we have undertaken is overwhelmingly positive, and most of all of the people, as a matter of fact, that we have spoken to are supporting us in our endeavor, and that's really is encouraging. And really it is because the support is there because it's a no-brainer. The pharmacists, owners and franchisees are fed up with paying and with not getting return on their investment from carrying somebody else's franchise name on their door. And we are offering a solution where it's ready-made, where they can become an owner, and that's our way we're going to look at transforming that retail industry.
Thanks, Eric. Well, that kind of wraps it up. So thank you again to everybody that attended. We'll look forward to further connections over the next weeks and months, and hopefully you'll join us, as Chris said, in our grand adventure. So with that, we'll call the meeting to a close, and thank you so much for attending the webinar. Bye for now.